I'm 72 years old, and last summer my own children abandoned me at an airport like I was a piece of lost luggage. They thought I'd quietly disappear from their lives. They didn't expect I'd survive, or that I'd get even. This is my confession. Hello, my name is Margaret Holloway, but everyone calls me Maggie, and I'm 72 years old. I always feel the need to introduce myself properly, especially when I'm about to tell a story that sounds so unbelievable people think I'm exaggerating. I wish I were. I wish I were the dramatic old lady who spices things up for attention. But no, this happened, every painful, humiliating, breath-stealing minute of it. And it all starts with the day my children, my own flesh and blood, left me stranded at the airport. I remember the way the automatic doors hissed open as I stepped inside, the way the cold air hit my cheeks, the way my son Daniel walked slightly ahead of me like I was some distant acquaintance he didn't want to be seen with. My daughter Brooke walked beside him, typing something furiously on her phone, her jaw tight and eyes darting around like everything was more important than acknowledging I existed. Mom, remember, Brooke said without looking up, your flight board's at 2. Don't get confused. We can't come back inside once we drop you off. Her tone was cutting, almost bored, like she was reminding a child not to spill juice on the sofa. I forced a smile. I know, sweetheart. I'm old, not helpless. Daniel snorted under his breath and muttered, could have fooled me. I don't think he meant to say it loud enough for me to hear. But I did. And it stung. Not like a slap, more like a slow, deep bruise blooming across my heart. I clutched my carry-on tighter, mostly so my hands wouldn't shake. I remember thinking how ridiculous it was to feel nervous around my own children. But that's how it had been for years, me tiptoeing around them, trying not to be a burden, pretending I didn't notice when they exchanged looks behind my back or whispered about Mom's memory or Mom's confusion even when I hadn't done anything remotely concerning. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing them. We reached the check-in area. They didn't help me with the kiosk, didn't stay with me in line, didn't even ask if I needed a wheelchair. They just hovered a few feet away, like handlers waiting for a package to be dropped into the right chute. I remember swallowing hard and saying softly, "You too sure you can't stay with me a little longer? Maybe until I reach the gate." Brooke's head snapped up. Mom, we've talked about this. We have to go. Daniel has work, and I'm meeting a client. You'll be fine. Daniel nodded mechanically. Yeah, Mom. You said you wanted to visit Aunt Sylvia. We're doing you a favor, remember? A favor. I had paid for my entire trip, but I didn't say anything. I didn't argue. I didn't want to push them further away. Mothers don't stop loving, even when children stop trying. I moved toward the security line. The place was buzzing, suitcases rolling, people shouting boarding calls, kids laughing, a million little noises that all blended into something loud and lonely. I turned back to wave at my kids, hoping for one last smile, one last moment where I could pretend we were still a family, but they were already walking away. Not a wave. Not a look back, just, gone. It was then, in that exact moment, that a strange, heavy feeling settled in my chest. Not sadness. Not anger. Something else. Something foreboding, like my body sensed a disaster before my mind understood it. I went through security slowly, carefully, making sure I didn't drop anything or forget anything. I didn't want to give them more reasons to roll their eyes at poor old Mom. I sat at gate B17, neatly folding my boarding pass, organizing my bag, humming to myself just to calm my nerves. 2 o'clock came. Then 2:15. People began lining up. The gate agent announced a delay. Complaints erupted around me, but something felt wrong. Off. Like a puzzle piece that didn't belong in the picture. I checked my ticket again, then checked the monitor, then the ticket, then the monitor. My heart slammed painfully against my ribs. The flight number didn't match, not even close. I blinked, thinking maybe I was reading it wrong, but the numbers remained different. My gate wasn't B17. It wasn't even in Terminal B. It wasn't in the airport at all. My ticket wasn't real. I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees trembled. I stumbled to the counter and handed the agent my boarding pass with shaking fingers. She said gently after typing for a moment, "I'm afraid this reservation was cancelled 3 days ago." My throat closed. "No," I whispered, "that can't be. My children just dropped me off." She looked at me with that soft pity people save for the elderly and the broken. "There is no flight. Not today. Not this week." The reservation was cancelled, and no new booking was made. I stared at her. The airport noise faded. My ears rang. My hands felt icy cold. My children had known. They brought me to the airport. Dropped me off. Walked away knowing I had no flight, knowing I had no way home, knowing I would be stranded. My first instinct was denial. Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they forgot to rebook. Maybe there's some explanation. So I called Daniel. No answer. I called Brooke straight to voicemail. I called again. And again nothing. I texted. Where are you? Then, the flight doesn't exist. Then, please call me. Then, I'm scared. Hours passed. No reply. The airport began to empty as night approached. The lights dimmed. Cleaning crews moved through the corridors. I sat alone, clutching my useless boarding pass, feeling smaller and smaller with every minute that ticked by. My phone buzzed once. My heart leapt. A text from Brooke. Just one sentence. A sentence that ended my world. Mom, we can't keep doing this. You need to figure things out on your own now. I read it 3 times, each pass cutting deeper. Figure things out on your own at T-72. I stared out the window at the planes I wasn't getting on, at the runway lights that seemed so far away, and I felt something inside me break, not cleanly, not loudly, but like a fault line splitting quietly beneath the earth. I cried. Not loud sobbing. Not dramatic. Just tears sliding silently, traitorously down my face. People walked past me without noticing that I wasn't a person to them. Just an old woman who didn't belong. But here's what they didn't know, what my own children didn't know. I wasn't as helpless as they believed. That I wasn't as broken as they hoped. And being abandoned like that, it didn't destroy me. It woke something in me. Something sharp. Something calculating. Something I thought I had left behind decades ago. Because this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what I did next, and how I made them regret ever underestimating me. The night they left me at the airport, I learned something about myself that I didn't know I still possessed: the ability to stay painfully, horrifyingly calm when the world falls apart. You would think at 72 I'd panic, or faint, or crumble into the kind of old lady fragility my children kept insisting I had. But no, I sat there, in that cold terminal, clutching the cancelled boarding pass, and felt something settle inside me with terrifying clarity. A silence. A focus. A kind of stillness I hadn't felt since my younger days, back when life demanded I be tougher than people imagined a woman like me could be. I breathed slowly, wiped my tears with the back of my hand, and looked around. Strangers walked by, talking about their vacations, their meetings, their families waiting back home. I didn't envy them. I didn't resent them. I just watched them the way a ghost might watch the living, separate, unseen, unreachable. Then my phone buzzed again. A second message. From Daniel this time. I braced myself, hoping for an explanation, an apology, something human. Instead, it was worse than Brooke's message. Mom, don't make this harder. We've talked about assisted living before. Maybe now you'll take it seriously. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Assisted living. So that was their plan. Not confusion. Not a mistake. Not neglect. A setup. Drop me off at an airport with no ticket. Let me wander until security found me, confused and distressed, an elderly woman alone, disoriented. Let them document it. Let the records show I was unable to care for myself. Then, when I inevitably called them sobbing and frightened, or worse, was picked up by authorities, they'd have all the ammunition they needed to shove me into some sterile room with beige walls and mandatory bingo nights. My own children, the ones I raised. Federation fought for. Loved with every inch of my heart, and they plotted to get rid of me not because I was sick. Not because I was mentally failing, but because I was inconvenient. A burden. A problem to be solved. A person replaced by a file, a number, an empty room with a bed and a tracking bracelet. My hands trembled as I read the text again, but the trembling wasn't from fear. It was something else. Something molten. Something ancient. A fire I hadn't felt since my husband died 31 years ago, leaving me alone to raise 2 children who grew up seeing my exhaustion as weakness, not sacrifice. I stood up slowly, steadying myself on the armrest. The airport was quieter now, stripped of its earlier chaos. A cleaning crew buffed the floors, humming softly. The big glass windows reflected my face back at me, tired eyes, wrinkled cheeks, hair mussed from hours of waiting. But behind the age, I saw something alive, something they thought was long dead. I left the gate, dragging my suitcase behind me. Each little wheel click against the tile sounded like punctuation, like a heartbeat, like the ticking of a clock counting down to something inevitable. When I reached the main concourse, I found a bench and sat down. The only light came from the overhead boards and a few dim lamps. The place felt like a train station in a ghost town. Perfect for thinking. My hands tightened around my phone. I didn't call them. Instead, I called someone else, someone they had spent years telling me to forget, Aunt Sylvia, but not the frail old woman they assumed she was. She answered on the second ring, her voice low and sharp as ever. "Maggie, you all right? Why are you calling this late?" Hearing her voice made my chest tighten, not with fear this time, but relief. Real relief. The kind you feel when the world corners you and someone, somehow, opens a door. I swallowed. They left me. At the airport. With a cancelled ticket. There was silence, then something like a growl. "Those ungrateful little snakes. I told you years ago, I know," I whispered, a bitter laugh escaping me. "I should have listened." "What do you need?" she said immediately, no judgment, no hesitation, just the kind of loyalty blood rarely gives. "I need a ride," I said quietly, "and I think I need a plan." "Oh honey," she said, voice hardening, "I've been waiting for you to say that." She was there in under 40 minutes. How a woman her age drives that fast at night is beyond me, but she pulled up in an old dark blue Bic that still smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and lavender hand lotion. The moment I got in the car, she looked me over, scanning my face like she could read the story without me speaking. "Let me guess," she muttered, pulling out of the airport, "they tried to push you into assisted living so they can sell your house and be done with the responsibility." I blinked. How did you know?" She scoffed, shaking her head. "Because it's what greedy, selfish, impatient children do when they think they're smarter than the people who raised them. They want the money, Maggie. And they don't want you in the way." Something in me clenched. I had thought it. I hadn't wanted to believe it. But hearing her say it made the truth settle into place like a final puzzle piece. We drove in silence for a while. The highway lights streaked across the windshield, casting strange patterns across the dashboard. My mind replayed every conversation, every moment in the past year where Daniel and Brooke had been oddly impatient, pressured me to sign papers, tried to make decisions for my benefit. I hadn't wanted to see the signs, but now they were blinding. When we reached Sylvia's house, an old ranch-style place with overgrown rose bushes and wind chimes that groaned in the night breeze, I felt something uncoil inside me. Not safety, resolution. After she made me tea and set a warm blanket over my shoulders, I finally told her everything. Every detail. Every word. The texts. The silence. The abandonment. When I finished, she leaned back, crossed her arms, and let out a long breath. "They think you're soft," she said. "But they forget who you used to be." I smiled faintly. "I guess I forgot, too." Then she leaned forward, her voice low and deadly calm. "What do you want to do about it?" I stared into my tea, the steam rising like fog on a battlefield. What did I want? To cry? To scream? To disappear? No, none of that. I wanted something I hadn't wanted in years. Something dangerous. Something empowering. "I want them to regret it," I said softly. "Good," Sylvia said. "Because you can." She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. A thick one. Stuffed with public records, printouts, documents with colored tabs sticking out from the sides. "What's that?" I asked. "Everything," she said, tapping the folder, "that your children have been hiding from you." I froze. "You knew they were doing something?" "I suspected," she said grimly. "And I started digging months ago. Just in case. I didn't want to show you unless I had proof." She slid the folder toward me. "Open it." My hands trembled as I lifted the cover. What I saw inside made my stomach twist, my throat go dry, my vision blur with rage. Financial records. Loan applications. Property tax inquiries. Conversations between Daniel and a realtor. A draft legal document labeled power of attorney transfer. And worst of all, an email from Brooke. Toa Senior Care Facility. Asking for availability. Asking for pricing. Asking about immediate placement options. Everything inside me went cold and hot at the same time. I closed the folder carefully, deliberately. "They wanted to take everything from me," I whispered. Sylvia nodded once. The air between us hummed with something dark, something powerful that I straightened my back, feeling my age but also feeling every year of strength it took to survive this long. They wanted me gone, I said, and now? Sylvia asked. A slow smile crept onto my face. Now, I whispered, I'm going to take back everything they think they're entitled to. Sylvia laughed softly. There she is. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, because of planning. I sat at the kitchen table with that folder in front of me, the documents spread out like a map to my own betrayal. Every page I turned made things clearer. Every detail sharpened my resolve. They thought abandoning me at the airport would break me. Instead, it woke up the version of me they hoped never resurfaced. The woman who survived heartbreak, widowhood, poverty, raising 2 children alone. The woman who had to learn to fight. The woman they forgot I once was. The woman who was done being underestimated. By dawn, I had a plan. And the first step was to let my children think I had disappeared exactly the way they wanted, because the easiest revenge is letting people believe they won until the moment they realize they didn't. The morning after I decided to disappear, I woke up before the sun even had the courage to rise. The house was quiet, except for the soft creaking of Sylvia's old heater and the wind chimes outside clinking like skeleton bones in the wind. I'd slept only a few hours, but adrenaline kept my heart beating fast, sharp, like a clock ticking toward something inevitable. I slipped out of the guest room and padded into the kitchen, where Sylvia was already awake, sitting at the table, cigarette between her fingers, hair tied in a messy knot, eyes sharp like she had been waiting for this moment for years. She smirked when she saw me. You look better this morning. Do I? I asked, rubbing my hands down the front of my cardigan. Yeah, she said, taking a long, slow drag. You look dangerous. I laughed softly, but it wasn't a cheerful sound. It was a sound I hadn't heard from myself in decades. A sound of someone who had nothing left to lose, or someone who finally realized she had everything to gain. The plan wasn't simple, and it wasn't quick. Revenge, real revenge, the kind that echoes in someone's bones for years, demands patience. But the first step was easy: disappear. The trick with disappearing is that you don't run. You don't hide. You let people believe you slipped through the cracks. And I knew my children, if they realized I was missing, they wouldn't panic. No. They'd sigh in frustrated relief and assume I wandered somewhere and someone else would deal with it. But the moment authorities got involved, the moment someone filed a missing persons report, everything they'd done, every shady email, every cancelled flight, every step in their plan to shove me into a facility would suddenly become a liability. I wanted them scared. Not for me, for themselves. Sylvia drove me into town that morning, her Bic rattling and complaining with every bump. The sky was a pale grey that suggested rain but didn't commit to actually bringing any. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Or maybe that was just me. We pulled into the parking lot of a tiny library, the kind no one visits except retirees and high school kids who need quiet places to make out. Perfect. I can't believe I'm doing this, I murmured as we walked inside. Well, Sylvia said, you can sit around and cry about how they treated you, or you can take the pen and start editing the story they wrote for you. And what if I go too far? I asked, half joking, half afraid. Sweetie, she replied, almost tenderly, there is no too far when someone abandons their 72-year-old mother at an airport. Fair enough. Inside the library, everything smelled like dust and old pages, comforting, familiar. I sat down at a computer terminal while Sylvia kept watch near the large window, tapping her foot anxiously like she expected my kids to burst through the door any minute. The first thing I did was pull up my bank account, or rather, what used to be my bank account. When the numbers loaded, I felt a cold wave roll through me. Not because I was surprised. Because I was right. 2 large withdrawals. One labeled loan repayment and another listed as a family emergency expense. Except I never took a loan. And there was no family emergency that required $6,000. I clenched my jaw so tight my teeth hurt. Then I checked my credit report. 2 new cards opened under my name. 1 maxed out. 1 almost there. They had started draining me financially. They didn't just want me in assisted living. They wanted to strip me of everything so I couldn't fight. Sylvia saw my expression change. What is it? I turned the screen toward her. She whistled low. Damn. They weren't wasting time. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Can I stop this? She nodded. You can. And you will. But you can't let them know you're alive yet. That's the part that matters most. We spent hours, literal hours, going through my accounts, freezing things, reporting suspicious activity, shutting down credit attempts, locking my social security profile. Sylvia guided me through each step, because she'd seen this kind of thing before. Not in her own family, but working at the courthouse years ago, she'd watched children dismantle their elderly parents' lives piece by piece. She used to warn me, and I used to wave her off, believing my kids were good. Funny, how that word lost meaning the moment they left me sitting alone under fluorescent lights in Terminal B. Once the financial protections were in place, Sylvia made us leave. We can't stay in one location too long. Not yet. Do you really think they'll look for me? I asked as we walked outside. She shrugged. If the police call them, yes. But they won't look because they care. They'll look because it'll put them in danger. That thought made something shift inside me. A dark satisfaction. Let them sweat. For once. We drove around for a while, stopping at a coffee shop, then a thrift store, then the grocery store. Sylvia talked, filling the silence with stories and gossip and little rants about life, but my mind stayed in the same place, turning over every moment of the past few years, every warning sign I ignored. The times Brooke borrowed money and never paid it back. The strange calls Daniel would make, asking if I'd considered downsizing. The look they shared when they thought I wasn't paying attention. That look. God, that look. The same one people give a dying houseplant they're too lazy to water anymore. By late afternoon, after a long drive through side streets and neighborhoods I hadn't visited in years, Sylvia parked in front of a small beige building and shut off the engine. Where are we? I asked. A lawyer, she said, grabbing her purse. One who doesn't like greedy children. I felt my stomach twist. Sylvia, this feels extreme. She snorted. Extreme is leaving your mother at the airport with no flight. Walking into an office to reclaim your independence is called survival. Inside, the place smelled like lemon polish and old legal pads. We sat in a small office with a quiet, serious woman named Rebecca Lane, who listened carefully to everything: my story, the airport, the cancelled ticket, the financial mess, all of it. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just took notes with calm, precise strokes of her pen. When I finished, she folded her hands on her desk. Mrs. Holloway, she said gently, you are in danger. Financially and legally. Your children are building a case to prove you're incapable of caring for yourself. I felt heat rise up my neck, a mix of anger and humiliation. But I'm not incapable. No, she said, leaning forward, you're not. And that is why we must act before they do. What do? I asked. I hated how small my voice sounded. You make yourself legally untouchable, she said. We'll revoke any pending power of attorney transfers, freeze your estate, and draft documentation proving you are of sound mind. Then, she paused, giving me a look that carried a hint of steel. We let them hang themselves with their own rope. The way she said it felt like being handed a loaded weapon wrapped in silk. Sylvia squeezed my hand under the table. I hadn't realized I was shaking until then. For this to work, Rebecca continued, you must stay quiet. Invisible. No calls. No texts. No trace. We want them to reveal themselves, to document what they do next. And trust me, they will. A part of me hesitated, not because I doubted the plan but because I doubted my heart. Was I really capable of doing this, to my own children? A mother's love is a stubborn thing. It clings. It forgives. It bends until it snaps. And mine was dangerously close to snapping. Rebecca saw my hesitation. She softened. Mrs. Holloway, they abandoned you in a public airport. They drained your accounts. They attempted to force you into assisted living for profit. If you don't act now, they will succeed. I looked down at my hands, old hands, wrinkled, veined, but steadier than they'd been in years. I'll do it, I said, and that was the moment everything changed. I signed papers. I answered questions. I provided statements. By the time we left the office, the sky was turning deep purple, the first stars blinking into view like tiny watching eyes. Once we were back in Sylvia's car, she looked at me quietly for a long moment. You okay? She asked. I nodded. I think I am. You don't regret it? No, I said softly. But I do feel something strange. What's that? I stared out the window as we pulled away from the curb, watching the world blur into colors. I said slowly, like I finally stopped pretending. Sylvia smiled. Good. Because the pretending is over now. We drove in silence for a while, until my phone buzzed inside my purse. I froze. Sylvia stiffened. Don't open it. But I couldn't help myself. I fished it out, my heart pounding, and saw the notification on the screen. A voicemail from Daniel. Just 1 minute long. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. I just stared at the screen, feeling something cold twist in my chest. He had noticed I wasn't home. He had noticed I wasn't answering. He had noticed I wasn't where they expected me to be. Good. Let the worry begin. Let the guilt grab them by the throat. Let the consequences start. Because disappearing wasn't the revenge. It was only the beginning. I didn't listen to Daniel's voicemail that night. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. A part of me still ached for the sound of my son's voice saying something that resembled remorse. But I knew better. Remorse wasn't in his vocabulary unless it served him. And I didn't want his voice crawling into my head and softening me before my plan was complete. Instead, I tossed my phone into a kitchen drawer at Sylvia's house and let it buzz, ring, vibrate, and blink itself numb. At first it came once an hour. Then twice. Then more. By morning, the notifications had multiplied so much it looked like my children were clawing at the door, pounding, demanding to be acknowledged. Good. Step 1 was working. Disappearing was one thing. Letting guilt blister under their skin was another. I had done both. Now came the part that scared me. The part one wasn't sure I could go through with until I felt it happening, slow, creeping, inevitable. By the second day, Brooke's messages turned frantic. Mom, this isn't funny. Call me. Daniel said you weren't home. Where did you go? I'm calling the police. Mom, answer me. MOM. Then came the call from a number I didn't recognize. Sylvia glanced at the screen and smirked. Police, she said. Bet you anything. I didn't answer. We waited. Hours later, 2 officers visited my house. I wasn't there, of course. My house was dark, locked, empty. A neighbor texted one of Sylvia's old friends, who called Sylvia, who then leaned back in her chair and grinned like a cat who'd watched a mouse walk willingly into its mouth. They're panicking, she said. Good. But the truth was, I felt sick, not physically. Emotionally. There's something terrifying about watching your own children realize they've lost control of the person they thought they owned. Something tragic. Something heartbreaking in a way words don't quite swallow. For a moment, a small one, flickering like a candle, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If maybe, just maybe, I should have answered one of those calls, but then I remembered standing at gate B17. Holding a fake ticket, waiting for a flight that didn't exist, watching the door where my children should have been, and my heart hardening as the truth became undeniable. No, I hadn't gone too far. They had. The police formally declared me missing on the 3rd day, and that was the moment everything shifted, because missing persons reports come with expectations, procedures, questions, investigations, and investigators. It wasn't long before they knocked on Daniel's door, then Brooke's. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later in exquisite detail from a neighbor who'd always disliked Daniel's smug attitude and was more than eager to share what she'd witnessed. 2 officers stood in my son's doorway, asking him simple questions. When did you last see your mother? Why was she traveling alone? What efforts did you make to ensure she got on her flight? And then the one that made Daniel apparently stutter: why was the flight reservation cancelled? Cancelled, not delayed. Not changed. Cancelled. By him, because police get records and airlines cooperate when someone is missing. And suddenly, the story they had crafted so carefully began crumbling in their hands like wet sand. Brooke didn't fare much better. She broke faster, apparently, crying, swearing she didn't know anything was wrong, insisting she thought I wanted space. Her words, space. I guess abandonment is now labeled space when guilt starts tightening its noose. While the police circled them like cautious sharks, I stayed put at Sylvia's, watching quietly from the shadows of my new anonymity. She made us tea in chipped mugs, her old dog snored beside the heater, and the wind outside kept rattling her windows like the world itself was applauding. But something strange happened then, something I didn't expect. I started feeling lighter, not vindicated, not triumphant, just free. Free in a way I hadn't felt in years, free of their expectations, free of the performance of motherhood, always giving, waiting, hoping, free of the aching loneliness that comes from loving people who see you as an obligation. For the first time in decades, I could breathe without waiting for someone to sigh and roll their eyes. On the 5th day, Rebecca, the attorney, called Sylvia's landline. It worked, she said. Everything worked. She explained that my children were now being questioned formally. Their financial activity was frozen by court order pending investigation into elder fraud. Their conversations with the realtor were documented. Their attempts to change my legal status were recorded. Their sudden panic and disjointed stories were being reviewed, and then came the blow that sealed everything. Mrs. Holloway, Rebecca said, a judge has granted full protection of your assets until you voluntarily reappear. Your children cannot touch anything. Not your house. Not your accounts. Not even your mail. I exhaled slowly. Sylvia beamed at me like I just won a trophy. But the victory wasn't in the money or the legal protection or even the fear my absence created. The real victory was realizing I didn't owe them anything anymore. Not explanations, not forgiveness, not access. Nothing. On the 7th day, after a week of silence, I finally opened the drawer, pulled out my phone, and sat at Sylvia's kitchen table with the voicemail still waiting for me like a ghost I'd refused to acknowledge. I played Daniel's message. His voice was hollow. Shaky. Mom. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where you are. Look, Brooke said you never got on the flight, but that doesn't make sense. Just call us. Please. I don't. His voice cracked. For a moment, I couldn't breathe because for the first time in years, he sounded like my son again, not the man who used me, not the man who planned my disappearance, but the boy I raised. Then the tone changed. Mom, the police came. They're saying the reservation was cancelled. They're saying someone used your name for accounts. I didn't do anything. I swear. Please don't let them think. Then another break. Just call me. Please. I'm scared. I sat there with the phone in my hand for a long, long time. The old me, the me who spent decades patching up skinned knees, packing lunches, hiding tears behind bathroom doors, would have called him back immediately, but that version of me was dead. They killed her the moment they walked out of that airport. I set the phone down and wiped my eyes. One tear fell, then another, but not from sadness. From release. From closure. That night, I opened the back porch door and stood under the stars. The air was cool, crisp, alive. I could smell rain in the distance. Somewhere a dog barked, a train horn moaned, and the world kept turning without asking me to chase after it. Sylvia came outside and stood next to me. You ready? She asked softly. To go home? I asked. To start your life over. I took a long breath. I think I already have. A week later, I walked into the police station on my own terms. Calm. Collected. Clear. I told them everything. Every detail. Every fact. Every piece of evidence. They didn't arrest my children, not yet. That would come after the investigation. But the officers looked at me with an expression the world hadn't given me in years. Respect. Actual, genuine respect. When it was over, I stepped outside into the sunlight, letting it warm my face. Sylvia waited for me in her car, waving, smiling proudly. We drove back to my house together. My house. Mine. Protected now. Locked. Safe. And when I opened the door, I didn't feel fear or grief or anger. I felt ownership. I felt myself. I felt alive. My children still call, still text, still send emails, still try to reach me through neighbors and distant cousins, but I don't answer. Not because I want them to suffer, but because I suffered long enough, and because sometimes, the most powerful revenge is disappearing from the lives of the people who wanted to erase you first. They left me at the airport and never came back, but I did, just not for them, for me, and in the end, that was the sweetest victory of all.